Hello, and welcome back to another episode of There's Danger Here. I'm Leilani,
And I'm Sam.
and this is the next episode in the MMIW movement we're going to discuss.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to be discussing women out of Montana this time, specifically Bighorn County, wherein the bulk of the indigenous reservations are found. According to the book Stolen Voices, 64.2% are Crow, 6.3% are Cheyenne, and the rest are non-Indigenous. So,
Wow.
yeah. The Associated Press reported nearly 300 cases of missing Native American women and girls reported to authorities in Montana in the year 2019.
In just that year?
Mhm.
Oh, no, that's like half the population of Montana.
I feel like you're bringing the population way down.
I
Way
am.
down.
I am by a 100,000 or so, or like, yeah,
Yeah.
by quite a bit.
Yeah.
Not 100,000, probably 300,000.
Okay. So again, I want to remind everyone that this is not a single story, but the stories of many. The first of which is of Roylyn Lois, rides horse. Roylyn was born on January 8th, 1988. And then in late April 2016, she dropped off her 6 children with her mother and went on a date with her boyfriend. They had moved recently, and Roylyn thought the two needed a date, a night to relax together as a couple. They went to the Kirby Saloon and had some drinks together, though they ended up fighting after Roylyn went onto the dance floor without him, and her boyfriend accused her of cheating, or that she would be willing to cheat with
Oh
anybody
my
there,
God.
basically.
Okay.
In return, Roylyn flung the same accusation back at him, and he reacted by leaving her alone at the bar while he drove himself home.
Oh, what a jerk.
I know, that's a horrible move. You never leave anybody.
No.
Like, if you go together, you leave together. That's the golden rule of everything, especially if you're a couple.
Yeah, I mean, alcohol
I know.
clouds the judgment.
I know, but it's still frustrating. Another patron that was there, Angelica Whiteman, approached her and asked if she was okay. And at the time, Roylyn kind of brushed her off until she realized that she had either forgotten or dropped her phone in the car on the way there.
Oh no.
Either way, no phone. And we're in cell phone era, so she
Right.
doesn't remember probably any
Anyone's phone
numbers.
numbers, yeah.
So she approached Angelica, who was sitting with a group of people, and asked for a ride to her mother's house in Crow. Angelica agreed, and the group, I think there's at least 2 other males there, but it sounds like there was a third person, but they don't really get named in the story. But there's 2 others confirmed
Okay.
that left. So between 3 and 4 people left the bar with Roylyn. And as soon as they were into the car, Angelica and Roylyn started arguing.
Oh,
So Angelica told Roylyn she knew Roylyn's boyfriend because he was cheating with Angelica's best friend,
oh.
essentially. The verbal argument turned into Angelica attacking Roylyn in the car. And it sounds like, from multiple reports, that Angelica was in the front and Roylyn was in the back, and she like leaned over the front seat and was like punching her from the front seat
Oh
into
my
the back.
God. What a nightmare.
Eventually, she grabbed a beer bottle and slammed it against Roylyn's head, knocking her out. At that point, telling the driver of the car, a DeMarzio Sanchez, to pull onto Castle Rock Road. There, they drove for a while before pulling to the side, and Angelica pulled Roylyn out of the car by her hair and away from the car area. Then, as Roylyn began to come to, the assault continued. Angelica kicked and punched the wounded Roylyn, stripping her in the process. And then took a bandana that was supposedly handed to her from DeMarzio and strangled her, but causing her to be unconscious once again. The 2 left standing went back to the car, but not to leave. Instead, they pulled a gas can from the trunk, and DeMarzio and his brother Frank poured it over Roylyn.
Oh my God. This is like so extreme.
I know, over an argument about a cheating boyfriend.
There's got to be some history there. Like, what town was this in? Did you say?
That I says that they were headed to Crow, but it's on one of the Montana. It's they don't always name the towns that they start in.
Right. I just am curious. Like, I feel like there's got to be some form of stronger history than just like an argument about this boy.
I don't know about history because it doesn't seem like, based on the reports, that Angelica knew her all that well. It really does just sound like an alcohol-fueled argument over
Holy cow, man.
a dumb boy.
Yeah, okay.
Um, so they lit a match and set Roylin on fire.
Holy shit.
Then they got in the car and left, and Roylin woke up
Whoa.
on fire. She managed to put herself out, then stood up and started walking towards the town of Crow. I guess you could see like the lights in the distance, and so she was just like, I gotta go that way. And she started walking. She walked for hours, making it 3 miles before she sat down in a field to rest. And 14 hours later, on April 17th, Steve Peterson, a rancher, was driving in the area when he turned onto Castle Rock Road.
Oh my God.
He so it sounds like he had to pee, so he literally just pulled off because he needed.
A private road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when he was doing his business, he saw something in the distance and couldn't determine what it was, but he realized it was like not supposed to be there. He's like, this doesn't look right.
Right. There
And so
was,
he went to investigate because this is what ranchers do.
yeah,
They go help, they go look. Farmers, man, they'll
I
get you
know.
every time.
They do.
So nice,
They're
usually.
resourceful humans.
Hmm. When he got closer, he realized it was a burned person. And he got real close, and Roylin uttered the word water.
Oh my gosh. She is a like champion.
Hmm. So see, Steve, of course, jumped into action because, like we said,
Right.
resourceful. And he got his sleeping bag that he had in his truck, and he didn't have any water, but he had a Diet Coke. Um, because that's all he had left. And he wrapped up the girl and attempted to give the Diet Coke, but her lips were burnt off
Oh,
completely. So it sounds like he like ran back to the truck, found a straw, and then put it in there and ran back to her, and she managed to get a couple sips of this Diet Coke in her. And then he picked her whole body up and put her in the passenger seat. And she was just like very, like
oh,
there, but poor thing. Um, so on the way to the hospital, he saw a BIA, which is a Bureau of Indian Affairs officer, and flagged him down. He told the officer that the woman had told him that her name was Roylin Ride's horse, and she knew who attacked her.
oh my gosh.
The officer gave another blanket and radioed to the hospital that they were on their way, basically like, I have a trauma coming in. This
Right.
is a burned woman. As soon as they got to the hospital, she told the officers who assaulted her. Then she was life flighted to the burn trauma ICU at the University of Utah Healthcare Hospital in Salt Lake City, Utah.
I was gonna say usually they get life flighted to Harborview. People in Montana.
Yeah.
We must have been too busy.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Salt Lake City was probably closer. She suffered burns over 45% of her body, along with the trauma from being beaten and strangled. She had 30 surgeries to include amputations of both feet. She lost a breast, her lips, and eyelids as a result of the fire.
Oh my God. The fact that she survived 45% of her body being burned is remarkable to me. Um, it's hard to fathom that, but
Yeah,
what a nightmare to have to go through.
yeah. After naming those who attacked her, Angelica was arrested on May 11th, 2016. And on June 22nd, 2016, Frank and DiMarzio were also arrested. There is also one source that says I think either Frank or DiMarzio were at home when they were arrested and that their girlfriend was wearing her clothes
Oh,
at the time of the arrest. Because if you remember, they stripped her.
right.
Angelica was sentenced to 40 years in prison with 5 years of supervised release, and Frank was sentenced to 9 years in prison with 3 years supervised release, and DeMarzio Sanchez was sentenced to 100 years in prison.
100 years in prison?
Yeah, I think he's the one that
Poured the gas
poured the
on her?
gas and
Or, like, lit
lit
her up?
her. Mhm. And he was the driver of the vehicle, so he brought her out there, and I don't
Yeah.
know all the other.
Angelica's, like, the one who
I know.
provoked
I
it
think
all.
she should have definitely faced more time.
Yeah. She, like, is a picture perfect image of a vindictive woman. Like,
Mhm.
just managed to have this man go down for, like, the crimes that she really was the one who was making him do them.
Yeah,
Like, it's at least what it sounds like.
it does. Royland succumbed to her injuries on June 28, 2016,
Oh,
67 days after being
yeah.
attacked.
I mean, okay. It that tracks,
I
unfortunately.
know.
Like
That's Yeah, it would have been a miracle that she survived. It sounds like the whole time family was like at bedside and
I hate to say this because there's plenty of burn victims who have gone on and I'm sure are very happy in their lives, but when you suffer that amount of damage from fire,
Mhm.
like the lifetime of torture you have to go through to
Yeah.
maintain your injuries and like continue your skin grafts and like your
And scars don't stretch.
yeah, and you're like
Yeah.
constantly going into surgery and you're constantly in the hospital and you're like it's like a lifetime of torture. So
Mhm.
there's a part of me that like I'm like it's better, I'm happy that she didn't have to suffer that.
Yeah.
Um
And it did say in a few places that, while she was in the hospital, trying to recover, they did do skin grafts from her, and like the unburned areas and I was like, oh my God, I can't even imagine because skin grafting is not an easy process. It can be painful. And so you're taking skin from the only area that's not painful
right.
and making it painful. I'm like, oh, this poor woman, what she went through for those 67 days.
Oh, I burn victims,
Hmm.
it's like one of the few things in my career as a nurse that I really, really genuinely struggle with. Like, because you know this, but to listeners who might not, like, you have to scrub the burns on these bodies to like
Hmm.
remove the skin that's sloughing and dying. And like, there's only so much pain medication you can give someone before you knock them out. And you
Yeah.
don't sedate them every time you're doing it. But at Harborview, remember when I was interviewing for a job there and I was trying to determine like which ICU unit I wanted to work in. There was the neuro, there was the burn, or there was the trauma. And I remember going to the burn and they showed me like their scrub rooms and it's just this like large metal table and it looks like a massive shower room
Hmm.
and like I'll never forget nurses telling me like the echoes in that room are just deafening. Like, oh, it's just like
Hmm.
what a
No, there's one that I couldn't do it.
yeah.
That is too much for me. But
Yeah.
yeah, so um, we're going to move on to the next story.
Okay.
Bonnie Three Irons was born on May 31st, 1982. On April 10th, 2017, she had her mother Jennifer and an auntie over for dinner along with her children. Though her auntie Jayla was similar age, it sounds like, so they kind of grew up together.
Mhm.
After dinner and the house was cleaned up, Jayla and Bonnie went out, leaving Grandma to watch the kids. Morning arrived, but Bonnie did not. And so Jennifer had one of the teens watch over the smaller children while she went to work. Since Bonnie didn't come home, all the kids went over to their fathers. Jennifer attempted to call Bonnie and Jayla throughout the day and got no answer. On day 2 of no Bonnie, and it was one of her daughter's like birthdays, and they were going to celebrate at Chuck E. Cheese, it sounds like.
Oh,
And so they're like, well, maybe she was still out, but she's definitely
she'll show
coming.
up to
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
but she did not.
Oh no.
I know.
Yeah.
Jennifer called Bonnie and Jayla, and still nothing. So she called other friends in the neighborhood who all said the pair were together, probably just off somewhere. On day 3, finally, Jayla answered her phone.
Oh.
Unfortunately, she told Jennifer that Bonnie had left with someone else that night that they went out.
How come she's not answering her phone until now?
So they live on government assistance, and her phone had run out of minutes, and so
Oh,
she had to
damn.
wait for
Okay.
that month's monthly assistance to come in, at least from the report that I could find, in order to add minutes to her phone. And even Jayla was like, "Well, maybe Bonnie's phone ran out, and that's why she hasn't,
Hmm.
you know,
Right.
answered." But day 4, and Jennifer went to the Crow police and was told to wait a few more days. And in a couple area sources, it says that she waited a few days because she knew that's what they were going to tell her.
Right.
And you'll see in a lot of these cases, they don't immediately go to police, and it's because they don't. They're
They
like, they're
know
not going to
that.
do anything.
Right.
So why bother? Is kind of the attitude, which is heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking.
But they said to wait a few more days of these few days that she'd likely come home. Bonnie continued her um sorry. The mom continued her efforts and learned from acquaintances of Bonnie's that she went to the Wolf Mountains drinking with friends that night that she went missing, and several of them said that she had gotten in a fight with somebody and stormed off
Okay.
in the middle of the mountains.
I mean,
In the middle of the mountains.
yeah. So I can actually sort of understand potentially storming off in the middle of the mountains, but the part that wouldn't track to me is when she doesn't come back in an hour,
Mhm.
what is everyone thinking?
Yeah. Why haven't you?
Like, she needed to go blow some steam off. She wanted to just she probably they live outdoors.
Yeah.
Right? It's normal. You live in a beautiful area. You're probably outside all the time. You feel comfortable in the mountains wandering off by yourself in the middle of the night, potentially.
Mhm.
I know I did in high school because we were always outside, and that's where we would get into our trouble. So I would have been fine walking off by myself,
Mhm.
but it would be the part of wait, how come they are not back yet?
Yeah.
Where'd they go?
Exactly. Um So Jennifer, after hearing this, was even more worried as the nights were very cold. She contacted a man named Carrie Lance who lived in nearby Pryor, and we're going to hear his name a few times. He helped form a search party, and they went up into the mountains to look for Bonnie. Cops from the BIA finally showed up at the search, but they did not help. According to Bonnie's mom, the BIA, the BIA cops slept in their vehicles as volunteers searchers combed the mountains looking for any sign of Bonnie. The search party kept a map and marked the areas that they had searched, end quote.
Mm.
On April 14th, the search followed a single set of footprints. Twice it went off the dirt path before returning. For 6.3 miles, her footprints were followed
What?
when they just ended. Then there was nothing.
What was there snow on the ground?
No, I think it was just dirt.
That's impressive. That
Listen, this guy's a tracker. It
okay.
seems like this is what he does.
That's pretty impressive.
He also seems so Carrie sounds like a community staple. Everybody knows him. Everybody
Uh-huh.
knows to contact him if you need a search party. He's gonna get people out. He sounds like a wonderful human being.
Yeah.
Wonderful human being. Um, So the party continued to search in the surrounding area, and 200 yards away, there laid Bonnie. She was lying on the ground, head downhill, with arms and legs outstretched. She was missing a shoe, and she appeared to have drag marks under her, suggesting she had been moved.
Uh,
Bighorn County coroner was called and labeled her death as a result of hypothermia.
oh, come on.
No other information has ever been identified.
Come on.
They considered it open and shut.
That's insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Just wait.
That's insane.
I know.
I am a little speechless, which I shouldn't be because
Hmm.
we're on a podcast.
I
But
know. There were some statistics out there of how many cases were labeled quote unquote accidental hypothermia.
right.
And this is ridiculous. This is not what happened. And they're just like, nope, it was hypothermia. they died as a result of hypothermia, or like hypothermia as a result of like, alcohol and things like that. But they're like, they consider them accidental so that they can close them.
That's crazy.
And that's, yeah.
So no investigation was ever done then.
Mm.
I was gonna say, because like, were the people she was with in the forest that night ever questioned?
No, not that I saw. At least not by police.
Like, that's where instantly, that's where my suspicion jumped in, is like,
Who is he fight?
how,
Who is she fighting with?
yeah, and like, who are your friends that don't care to think about where you've gone?
Yeah.
Like, who are you with in the forest that says, "Oh, she's just out in the woods
Walking
tonight
6 miles away.
and it's 30 degrees outside," or
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
See? Yeah, I know.
That's crazy.
So the next case is Henny Leslie Scott, born on January 4th, 2004 in Lame Deer, Montana. At 14, family and friends say she was well liked and made friends with everyone. So on December 8th, 2018, Henny asked her mother, Paula, to go to open gym. Reluctantly, her mother said yes. And I say reluctantly because Henny was supposed to be grounded.
Oh,
She was like 2 days away from getting ungrounded. And so she was like, okay, you've been doing good. I'm going to let you go, is what it sounds like. She told Henny to be home before her dad got back from work that night. And just before she was due to arrive home, Henny called Paula asking to go to the Native American Classic basketball game in Billings. And Paula was like, no,
right,
you're grounded.
right. Nice try,
Yeah,
honey.
nice try.
Yeah,
She did say, like, do you need to be picked up from wherever you're at?
right.
And Henny said that she had gone to the twins' house. That's how it's labeled, and would be home soon. Um, Henny then asked for a ride home, and one of the twins said that she'd have to wait until someone was willing to give her a ride because a house party formed. And
Mm,
so she did have some drinks with friends. And of course, in the meantime, Paula's waiting
oh my God.
for her to come home.
I'm like thinking of my childhood and
Yeah.
that, like my teenage years, like you get an inch from your parents and then I just would try to
A
take a
mile. We
mile.
all did.
Yeah.
We
Like,
all did. I know I had like a curfew, but I could not break it, but like I called one time and I was like, "Oh, we're gonna watch a movie." Bitch, that was a 3-hour movie.
yeah,
Mom's like, "What the fuck?"
yeah,
She was so mad, so mad. And I was like, "Well, it was this movie." And she's like, "Well, you didn't even say it was a 3-hour movie." I'm like, Well, I said we were watching a movie. We did legit watch a movie."
yeah. Oh man, I feel like I've had that very conversation. Like, even can I just go to open gym? Okay, just that. And then next thing you know, it's like, oh, actually, now that I'm here, can I do this? Like,
Mhm.
a lot of times I probably would have already been in Billings at the basketball game when I'm calling my parents to ask if I could go to Billings to the basketball game.
I'm not
Like,
even surprised. You're like, "Oh, sorry, already
yeah,
here,
yeah.
already here." So Paula was waiting at home and she started to get nervous kind of as the time ticked on.
Mm-hmm.
Made worse when she started to call and text Henny and Henny didn't answer.
Mm-hmm.
She tried to wait up, but she fell asleep, and eventually her husband Nate woke her up when the sun came up, letting her know Henny
Henny's
wasn't
not
home.
home.
That day, Paula went to social media, messaging Henny's friends and posting, asking if anyone had seen her. Like, she wasn't trying to raise all the flags at this time, but she's like, oh, that's kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she stayed out and just wanted to ask for forgiveness
Right,
after,
right.
she had kind of been pushing boundaries. That's why she got grounded before.
Yeah,
But still, there's that feeling like, oh no, something's happened. And it sounds like Paula kind of had that pretty quickly, but was trying to keep it at bay.
yeah.
So nothing came all day, and that night Nate stayed up waiting for Henny to come home, allowing Paula to try and get some sleep. The following day, when she still didn't return, Nate went to the twins' house. The mother answered the door and said nobody else was there, basically shutting the door on Nate.
Mm.
Like, I'm sorry, if I'm a mom and somebody thinks that their
They're,
child is there, I'd be like, no, come on in, let's talk about
yeah,
it. Like, when do you think that you saw him last? I'm gonna wake up my goddamn kids. They're
yeah,
gonna answer
yeah.
questions.
Who
Like,
can I call people with you? Like,
yeah,
is there, like, what can I do to
yeah.
assist you?
But if you think he was here, we're gonna get with my kids first and
Oh,
find out. And if
100%.
they were, we're gonna find out where they went.
Yeah. If they're not home, we'll drive to where they're at if they're
Yeah,
not answering their phones.
exactly.
at least end this like search in this area if
Yeah,
we
so
can.
you don't have to worry that
Yeah.
they're here and
Right.
I'm harboring them or
Right.
anything,
Yeah.
Like, no, answer the damn questions.
Yeah.
Um, so Paula made missing persons flyers while Nate was out, and the flyers were posted online to online sites and even got a few responses of people saying that they thought they saw them in one place or the other. And so Nate and Paula went and drove to each
Mhm.
location. So still nothing. And when Henny remained gone for another day, Paula finally went to the police to file a missing persons report. Again, it sounds like family figured that they
We're
wouldn't
gonna
do
be
anything the first
right.
couple days, so they're waiting. The police came at Paula with a barrage of questions, of course. The police eventually chalked her up to a runaway after learning she had left once before when she was mad.
Right.
And Paula's like, first of all, it's not even like that. It wasn't um, like she had just left. She stormed off, but she came back.
Right.
She didn't run away. But they're like, no, she clearly has a checkered past where she's a
Right.
runaway. Another day passed and no Henny. Nate went back to the twins' house, knowing that the mother worked evenings, so he waited until she was gone and knocked on the door. One of the boys answered and told Nate that Henny left that night, that she was at the house walking towards a field and pointing in the directions. Um, and I guess she left because she had gotten mad at the twin that
Hmm.
answered the door, but really gave no other information and then just kind of was like, all right then, and like shut the door on him.
Oh,
Paula phoned the police again and they basically continued to shut her down, but she was not having it. So she called the neighboring police department and filed a report, and finally an investigation was underway.
oh, that's so sad that it took
A neighboring
like yeah.
department to listen. The police involved the FBI and a full scale effort began. But again, we're days behind now.
That's rare.
hmm The investigation dragged on for days and days, but nothing came of it. And after all of this nothingness, the family decided to reach out to White Buffalo, also known as Carrie Lance.
I knew it was gonna be our man
I
Carrie.
know.
I
So
love his name, White Buffalo. That's
I,
it's great.
I added it and I was like, when they put it in the book, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
it's got a good name.
Yeah.
It feels very like regal, like he's
Yeah.
like a steadfast, like standout within the community,
Right.
but like he's like that strong presence is what it reminds me of.
It's like
I'm sure it has a very good meaning. I don't know the
I'm
meaning,
sure it does.
but that's what it feels like,
Yeah.
like that slightly separated kind of fatherly figure, maybe
Yeah.
is what I'm looking
I
for.
know I'm literally like searching my brain right now while you're talking, thinking about what it is the word I'm looking for.
I see a man standing on a mountain, like
I
looking over everything
I
as a protector.
do you want to
That's
know
what I
what
saw.
I hear
Oh God,
or
here we
see?
go.
I see
It
like
better be good.
it's and I don't know the name of it. Are you a fan of Harry Potter?
I know Harry Potter.
I it reminds me of how there's like everyone has their like animal
Oh yeah.
that is sort of like a ghost animal that comes to them. And someone at one point has this like massive elk that walks up and it's like this white ghostly elk, but it just like makes everyone just totally respect the person who it represents.
hmm
I don't remember who it is and what those are called, but there's definitely a name for them. And they are like huge, important components of Harry Potter. And they're also incredibly like respected.
Oh.
And that's sort of what it reminds me of.
Oh my.
Someone
That's
listening to
not.
this definitely loves Harry Potter and hates that I just described it that way. I want to
hmm
say that right now.
Yeah. I don't see that at all. But that's
Yeah.
okay. You have your vision, I have mine. That's okay. We can have differing visions. So he got a group together after learning the details and they went out to search. That same day, as the party was searching, one of the men, um, so they're not just searching, but they're like canvassing the neighborhood. It sounds like
hmm
talking with neighbors. And one of the neighbors of the twins said that he had seen magpies swarming about 200 yards away. And while normally they're not a big deal, and normally they ate his dog's food the last few days, they were staying in a different
Oh
area
my God.
instead of, eating his food. And as they closed in on the area, Carrie got a call from an agent, Agent Smith. They reported they found something and that their team was no longer needed.
Oh.
Yeah. So it sounds like they went to this area, and it doesn't sound super reachable because Carrie got out like a drone, and they were going to run a drone over it,
Uh-huh.
which also would preserve evidence. So very smart.
Right.
Um, but then it like got late, and some other things happened, and that's when the agent called and was like, "It's all right. We found something. You don't need to come out anyway." Um, on December 28th, 20 days after Henny went missing, one of the agents told Paula and Nate they had located Henny, but nothing else. Instead, they were told to go home and wait.
What?
The following morning, her phone rang, but it wasn't the FBI or the police. It was a reporter.
Oh my God.
They gave their condolences for the loss of their daughter and wanted to know if they would speak about it, meaning it was the reporter
Who
who
broke the
informed
news?
Paula her daughter was deceased after reading a press report from the Bighorn County coroner.
Shut up. That's asinine.
hmm Why wouldn't they immediately say we potentially found her?
Right.
Like, and why weren't they told to come identify the body?
Why why would you not make that your first phone call when you find this dead girl?
Yeah. And it's not just that they found her, because I know in previous cases we've talked about they want to confirm identity before
Right.
telling the family, but they told her, we found Henny, go home and wait, and we'll give you an update. So they said they found her. They believed it was
Oh my
her.
God. And then
And then the coroner releases a press release that they found her deceased. And I was like, who confirmed how did they confirm her identity?
and could you that mother who was holding out hope at the first 48 hours,
Yeah.
72 hours that she's going to find her daughter.
hmm
If you get a phone call from the police that says we found her and they don't go
Say
into
she's deceased.
other details, there would be probably a larger portion of you thinking, thank God
They found her.
my daughter's going to come home.
Yeah.
I am so blown away by when was this? In
2000, what did I say? 18?
18?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How in a world that's so, I hate to use this word, but so woke, so aware of how we should communicate with other humans, do this. Oh, it blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
It blows my mind.
So in the press release, quote, a forensic examination determined Henny Scott died of hypothermia and that the manner of death was accidental. The forensic examination did not find any significant trauma or pre-existing disease. In addition, the investigation determined that when Scott was last seen alive, she was wearing lightweight clothing in below freezing temperatures. The forensic examination also showed that alcohol use was a significant condition of her death. End quote.
So it's not investigated.
No. Her parents had her transferred to the local mortuary and then had to wait another day to see her. Again, who confirmed her identity?
Right.
Like, okay. They gave over burial clothes and were handed clothes she was found in. And then they brought her home for a traditional ceremony. As her mother sat in the teepee that they had erected, she noticed something odd. Henny's nose looked broken.
Good.
She grabbed Nate and a camera and confirmed that Henny's nose indeed looked different and so they took photos. Then they began checking her over, finding scratches all over her body and a cigarette burn on her leg.
Oh,
But the police and coroner closed her case and refused to reopen it, saying that she died due to hypothermia. During her ceremony, numerous teens came forward saying that Henny had been assaulted and then stuffed in a freezer. It was only when the investigation began to ramp up that she was moved to the field to get her out of the house. But the police didn't care or listen. Years after her burial, the family couldn't take it anymore and she was exhumed, which in a couple sources I read is kind of against Native American protocol.
yeah,
You don't pull them back out of the ground. But they needed to.
yeah.
They wanted answers, which is I can't imagine that decision.
It would have been like going against everything you've ever thought you believed in. But then
Mhm.
you realize I believe in my daughter more, I
Mhm.
guess, at that point, right?
Yeah. That's a
Like
tough call,
it's a tough
and
call.
I can't fathom like how they made it. So,
Yeah.
um, but other than determining no insect bites were noted, even though she was supposedly out in the elements for weeks, no other usable information was found. And there was a report saying that her nose was not broken. But I was like, well, how much was the decay?
Right. I was
Like,
also wondering, like, what was the temperature outside, like 24/7?
yeah,
Like,
I have no idea.
did it go above freezing at all? Because if she was outside for weeks,
Hmm.
like, she would not be well, like, she wouldn't be in a good state,
Yeah.
like 2 weeks.
Well, this is years after.
Right. But I'm saying, like, when they find her, she was
Hmm.
missing for how many days?
20 days.
Like 20 days.
Hmm.
And if they were like, if at all the temperature went above 32 degrees
Hmm.
throughout the day and the sun's beating down on her potentially, maybe not, but she's maybe on a lush forest ground that has maggots and flies and like she would not be in a great state, like
Yeah.
assuming that it got above freezing.
Yeah. I don't know
Um,
what the temperatures were. They might have been below freezing because it was
right.
winter, but still, it's still odd that there's no activity, like no insect activity
Yeah,
affected her at all. But that was all they got, and they kept the case closed.
that's crazy. I
Hmm.
mean, that's like oh, in like another life, it makes me wanna become like a PI and move into these like
Yeah.
communities and be like, "Let's solve this.
Hmm.
Let's do this. Let's figure it out."
Yeah. I do not think I'm smart enough for
I was
that,
gonna say,
but
and
I
then
can't.
even with that being said though, like you become a PI and then you go to the police with all this evidence and they still have the potential of saying, nah,
Yeah.
you're wrong."
No, it was hypothermia,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah,
It was a heavy eye roll, obviously.
right.
So next we're going to move on to Selena Shelley Faye Bell, Not Afraid. Sorry, it's a long name. And she was born on June 18th, 2003. She was touted as being both book smart and street smart. She was a great athlete and was caring and protective of friends and family. Selena had been through a lot in life, though. At 11, she found her sister, her twin sister, who had hanged herself after being unable to cope
Oh,
with a raging custody battle between parents.
oh God.
She also had an older brother who was shot and killed by police on their front lawn,
Oh my God.
and an older sister who was killed in a hit and run.
Wow. So 3 siblings.
Hmm. Still, Selena was a happy young woman, and she made plans on New Year's Eve 2019 to hang out with a friend, Dina. And Dina was originally her older sister's friend, who was killed by the hit and run. And so Dina was 7 years her senior, but after the loss of her sister, the two became close
Mhm.
friends. That day, last minute plans were changed to go to Dina's new boyfriend's house in Billings, which is less than an hour away from Hardin, where Selena lived. Selena's mother dropped her off but told her she wouldn't have the car in the morning, and Selena said that was fine. Dina could bring her back. And that evening, the girls hung out watching movies until Dina's boyfriend and a group of others showed up as the bars closed, ringing in 2020. A party ensued, and in the morning, Selena spoke to her auntie Cheryl, who called to check in at around like 9 a.m., it sounds like. And Selena said she wasn't sure when she'd be home as Dina was still sleeping. At noon, Selena's mom called to get an update, and Selena said Dina was still drunk and she would need a ride home after all.
Oh,
And she sounded pissed. She was like,
uh-huh.
how dare she? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, she would never usually do this, and this is where we are. And by all accounts, the boyfriend was like atypical of a man that she would normally go after, and had called her like a rebound boyfriend at one point or something, and was just kind of like trashier human being
Mm,
than what she normally associated with.
right.
And so Selena's mother called about 15 minutes later to let her know she was headed that way, but got no answer. When she arrived at the house, Dina was passed out in the front seat of her car, and it sounds like her mom like woke her up and was like, "What the fuck? Where's Selena?" Basically, like
Oh, Dina really Tried to ring in the new year, it sounds like.
Yes. And Dina said that Selena got a ride back to Hardin with her boyfriend, with Dina's boyfriend.
Okay.
So her mom arrived back home, but still no Selena. Hours later, and her mother called Cheryl asking if she had heard anything. When there was nothing, Selena's mother went back to the house in Billings and entered this
Oh
time.
my God, you'd be so mad.
Yeah, like
Like,
she was mama bearing it up.
yeah.
And I mean, I can say, yeah. I guess she was like yelling for her daughter through the house. She searched the whole house, and in one room she found Selena's purse. So she like picked it up and like threw it under her arm and was like, "Where is my daughter?" You know. They were like, "She should be back by now. She left a while ago." She yelled at a man who was like passed out in the house, and he said that 5 or 6 people left hours ago to go to Hardin with her. With no answer, she left again, calling Cheryl to tell her something was wrong, and the police were called. A van filled with 4 people at this time returned to Hardin. When questioned, and I don't know how they found the van, but I'm assuming based on like what the guy who was woken up in the house said, they found it. And so, police, because they in this case they actually like answered the call right away, and they're like, "All right, let's look for her."
Oh, I was expecting them still to like go to the van and then be like, okay, well, she'll turn up. Like,
This is an outlier, you'll
yeah.
see, in many ways. So when they were questioned, they said that Selena and another girl got angry when the van broke down at a rest stop area 20 miles out of town. Um, and like basically just like walked off, and they waited for the van to get fixed. And when it finally got fixed, they went home.
Huh.
So people flocked to the area to search for the girls. The Bureau of Land Management arrived with drones. A family with a helicopter from a nearby town showed up to help as well.
Wow.
It just says like a family,
Yeah.
like private
Just,
party. The sheriff's department bolstered the efforts. On the first day, it was discovered that the first woman was picked up by another vehicle, but Selena wasn't with her. They continued searching, and on January 3rd, Carrie Lance and his crew,
oh my God.
as well as a busload of classmates, came out to help search. Meanwhile, the people in the van were questioned, and their stories were varied and ever changing, but they didn't get any straight answers from it. Dina's boyfriend fled to Florida.
Yeah. I am inclined to think she never left that house.
Social media was used. A series of Snapchats that were uploaded, then deleted, were recovered by our Google sleuths. I love
Ooh,
them.
I do too.
One showed a woman in bloodstained jeans holding a beer, and a video that showed Dina's boyfriend arguing with a girl that looked a lot like Selena, but her face was never shown.
Oh, okay.
Selena's disappearance caught national attention, but still nothing. On the 12th day, the Missing Persons Task Force took over. On January 20th, she was found 1 mile from the rest stop.
Oh, from the restaurant.
So she was there, missing her jacket and shoes. Once again, media told Selena's family that she had been found before law enforcement said anything.
Oh, my God.
That
Oh,
one's got to be harder though, because it was the Missing Persons Task Force, and I don't know if they're like a separate entity or if they're part of like the police
right.
force. So it might have been not.
They discovered it and then,
And as they're getting like a coroner or whatever to come out, media gets wind of
right,
it and
right.
calls the family. So that one I'm not going to completely blame on them, not knowing all those factors. I just give them a heavy
Yeah.
side eye.
I don't know. I feel a little bad for the people in the media too, who
Hmm.
probably assume they're not the person who's about to break that news to
Hmm.
someone. And like, it
Yeah.
really make you question your decision and your career.
I don't
Like,
leave the fucking family alone. Like
oh,
if my kid ever goes missing, or God forbid something ever happens to him and a reporter calls me, get the fuck out. Like, we're gonna have some serious issues if you decide to invade my personal life that way.
on one hand, yes, but then on the other hand, if my kid were to go missing, I would go straight to the media and I would lean on them heavily to
Yeah.
like put my word out. So just being an American, I understand that like I can't have it both ways. So like if I'm asking for their help, like
Yeah.
to
No, let me
sensationalize my
grieve.
story,
Let me
then
grieve.
I understand that they're going to want to sensationalize my story when it comes to the, but I wouldn't
They're gonna call
understand.
the same day.
Yeah,
That's
it
disgusting.
is disgusting. And I wouldn't ultimately understand if it was like in that circumstance, like legitimately, I would be like, click,
Yeah,
like,
let him breathe. My
um,
God. Yeah.
but
No.
yeah,
Would you like to guess what her cause of death was labeled as?
hypothermia.
Accidental hypothermia, no foul play, even though she had significant bruising around her neck.
Yeah.
She was the fourth girl to be labeled as dying from accidental hypothermia that year.
Good God. How can you even like look yourself in the face as a police force?
It was January 20th when she was the fourth girl labeled.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that.
I know.
It was not even like,
We're 20 days in.
holy hell.
Yeah. On January 23rd, Crow Tribe Chairman Alvin Not Afraid Jr., Selena's uncle, asked Montana Attorney General Tim Fox to assist in the investigation of his niece's death. Quote, Selena's death and the unsolved cases of so many other missing and murdered Indigenous people can no longer be the result of segregated resources and divided communities, end quote. The chairman also continued, quote, a unified approach amongst our communities is long overdue, and it may be the only way to keep our children safe. Let us work together at every level to bring closure and justice to our region. Selena and her family deserve no less, end quote.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, that's like my understanding of Indigenous people who are having to like go to the law, like law enforcement for help. There's truly that divide of resources.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's the off reservation police that think, well,
Mm-hmm.
that's not our problem.
Mm-hmm.
Or that's not a citizen of ours that we have to worry about, which is just asinine. It's
Mm-hmm.
insane.
It
Like
is. It's absolutely ridiculous.
it doesn't make it makes zero sense to me. And I feel like it should make zero sense to anyone who like has any ability to think for themselves.
It does. It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, it doesn't it's just so sick.
Mm-hmm.
It's so sick.
I know. And so um, the overarching theme of this one, none of these women, they were all found
So
under unfortunate circumstances, but none of the families wanted to go to the police because they knew that it wouldn't really be handled that well.
right.
Um,
Which I guess
in the last case, it was.
a
They did
takeaway
okay.
there though is like go to the police as soon as you have any suspicion because you already know that they're going to tell you come back later. So
Yeah.
might as well get a jump on them saying come back later,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um
Um, and that it's not always accidental deaths or an accidental hypothermia. Stop labeling it as that, please. Thank you. Do an actual
like
investigation.
take like 15 minutes. Like there's a how long did that story take you to tell me that last one? There's a lot of things that I have questions about. Just me here sitting listening to
Yeah,
it. One, didn't you say that like someone at the house um said that 5 people got into a van?
he's at 5 or 6.
Okay, 5 or 6. So also wear her shoes.
He wears her shoes and jacket.
Like
Why didn't she take her purse with
why
her?
is her purse still at the house? That's why I was like she never left that house because why is her purse still there? There's just like what it did you might not know this, but did it was Dina, right? The friend, the
Boy,
house that she was at.
yeah, it was her boyfriend's house.
Did she have anything to say? Like, what was her thoughts on the
I didn't
matter?
see anything in any sources, kind of, but I'm sure she felt
I'm
terrible.
sure she
And
felt
then
awful, but
they're also because they labeled it as accidental hypothermia, there was no investigation. So the boyfriend that fled, nobody questioned him.
right, he
Like,
just
why is he
is
fleeing?
living down in Florida now,
Like,
having a good old life.
why is he fleeing? Like, what are you running
He
from?
doesn't want to die of hypothermia in Montana.
And- Yeah, with bruising around his neck.
Oh my God.
Um, and it's frustrating because you know that there's likely something more, but your hands are tied. Like, investigation's closed. What can you do as a layperson? You know what I mean? To
Right.
get those answers. And so I don't know. I included them all because they're all very heartbreaking.
Yeah, they are. And it's, to me, shocking that they're like happening within just the last few years. Like,
Hmm.
it sounds like something that's like arbitrary now, like something that would just never happen anymore.
Hmm.
But this was
It happens all the time.
5 years
It's still
ago.
happening.
Right. Every day.
Hmm.
It's shocking. And
And the final takeaway is to get a Carrie Lance in your life.
I know
He sounds amazing.
he does sound amazing. I'm going to have to look at a picture of this man because I have painted him in my brain. And I have a feeling that I'm
Dead wrong.
spot on.
I don't believe you for a second. All right. The only other thing I'm going to add for this is the tip line for giving information on those who are missing or murdered is at 1-833-560-2065. And I just found it necessary to include that at the end of this one.
I think that's a good piece of advice to give.
Yes. To all those out there listening, be careful. It's a dangerous world we live in.